Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Our guest is still Dr. Salihu Lukman, APC chieftain and a former National Vice Chairman Northwest of the All Progressives Congress. Good morning, Dr. Lukman, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. I keep correcting, I'm not doctor, please.
Yes, thank you for joining us indeed. Well, very quickly, you issued a statement saying you have resigned your membership of the All Progressives Congress because your membership has been rendered useless. People will be curious. A national vice chairman, Northwest, a well-placed person within the party hierarchy, why would they render you useless? 2, you said there is no internal democracy. 3, you said President Tinubu will not allow reform within the party, and that the possibility of the President Tinubu allowing any form of reform within the party is very remote. At a time when President Tinubu was celebrating 25 years of democracy, 1 year of his administration, and his aides have been jubilating that in fact APC is doing very well. And yet you are an insider, you just threw the party under the bus, you threw the president under the bus, that party, all is not well. What exactly is the problem?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Abati. First, I think it is the other way around. The party and President Asuwaju threw some of us under the bus. The reality is that as a party, and all of you know, for more than 2 years, the advocacy has been to allow structures and organs of the party to function. And that led to the whole campaign against Senator Abdullahi Adamu and Senator Yola Imishori. And since their resignation in July last year, and the emergence of Dr. Abdullahi Umar Ganduje on August 4th, 2023, till today, no organ of the party has met. I have tried to remain in the public, raising issues, appealing to leaders to please function based on the rule of the party as provided in the constitution of the party. Unfortunately, all that have fallen on deaf ears. And as members, once meetings are not taking place, our capacity or our privileges to influence even decisions and action of government controlled by the party and leaders elected on the platform of the party will be very weak or almost impossible. And that is the reality we are facing today. And I didn't hide it in the statement you quoted, Although not meant for public, I sent it to selected people, but somehow it finds its way to the public domain. I was very clear that as it is today, the party is only a legal entity. The function that is supposed to exercise as a political party by way of aggregating interests and opinion has been sacrificed completely. Which is why we have a government, and frankly speaking, this is part of my pen. We were in the forefront of the advocacy for merger. We were in the forefront of the campaign to get PDP out of power. We were very clear. In fact, we were in the forefront of the campaign for the return of democracy. We were very clear. We had clear vision in terms of what this democracy should represent. Our vision was that it should represent a stronger capacity for governments elected to respond to the challenges and problems of the nation. Unfortunately, what we have is practically business as usual, if I can be diplomatic. From 2015, when PDP was defeated, there is no new initiative you can point at to say, as a party that came to change the reality of our politics, we have introduced to do things differently that will meet the expectation of Nigeria. Instead, we have actually regressed. Let's be very honest about it. And for me, at this, relative to people like President Aswaju and quite a number of people in his generation, I'm younger, but I'm not that young. I feel I'm at the almost closing period of my life. I've spent all my life campaigning for democracy, campaigning for better society, and I'm asking myself whether I can justify all that I have done to my children. I live daily with the frustration of not being able to meet some of the needs of my own immediate family members. And I think we need to ask the basic question, whether we want to continue living with false hope or we want to take up the challenge and really do the needful to begin to really get the country back on a track of our democracy being capable of responding to challenges of the country. I think that is basically the issues. I hope I have answered all the chance of questions you have raised.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Lukman. So it's interesting what you said, because if you say that you're struggling to meet your own responsibilities, imagine what the reality is for the common Nigerian on the street. But two things from your letter, even though you say it wasn't meant to be leaked out, but we some of us have seen the content of that letter. The first thing, two questions I have for you. The first thing is you talk about the fact that you campaigned against the military, you campaigned against the PDP, and almost now you have to campaign against the APC as it currently stands. At what point did you discover this? Is it under this administration or right from the previous administration led by former President Muhammadu Buhari? Because the things you talk about, plunging Nigerians into poverty, the state of the economy, the state of the nation, we know that it didn't start with this administration. The APC has been in power for the last, now 9 years. Were you this vocal? Did you call for, why didn't you resign at that point during the former president's tenure? Or do you think that he performed better than what we currently have in this situation? Because what this administration has said is that they inherited a bad economy from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's predecessor. The second thing is that you said that, and quote me if I'm wrong, that the APC cannot win the next election except through rigging. Is this an option that has been explored in the past, whereby they've come into power through rigging? Because I think this is such an expose and a revelation and an opportunity, like you said, to redeem the soul of the nation and also in the interest of not just yourself but your children. But you say that they might have to resort to rigging if they will win an election come 2027. Is this an option that has been taken previously?
Well, taking the first issue, I think I'm one of the most outspoken members of APC, and it didn't start today. Just about 2 weeks ago, I issued a statement about the failure of APC, and in that statement, I was very clear about the trajectory we come from. The question of at what point did I come to the conclusion of having to leave APC or coming to the conclusion that the APC has failed. If you read my writing, which didn't start today, I've been writing almost since all the existence of APC. I was very clear. First, APC wasn't a perfect political party. I saw it as a work in progress, and we remain critical, or I remain critical at every point, highlighting these challenges and even contesting issues. And I take you back to the period when, for instance, during the transition, when former President Buhari was leaving office, the whole question of consensus presidential candidate and the right of President Buhari or the privilege of President Buhari to nominate his successor. I was the first to rise up and contest against that. And we continue to engage him. I was very clear. The only thing that I can say encouraged a number of us in APC was that contestation within the party was very high. And some of us, even though at lower level, junior to leaders in the party, we could raise issues and through advocacy, gain recognition and have our way or have our say in terms of what is going on in the party. In terms of the fact that the problem facing the country didn't start with the current regime, I mean, that is not contestable, definitely. And in the piece I referred to, which I released 2 weeks ago, I make the point very clear that the truth about it, former President Buhari wasn't a visionary leader. His major strength was the fact that he had almost an impossible support base in the north, which made a number of leaders to surrender to him, you know. And all the challenges we face as a party started with him. The demobilization of structures of the party, making leaders, and I even cited the instances of how, for instance, President Aswaju, all that he could be able to do was to nominate former Vice President Osibanjo as the running mate of Buhari. That was all the influence I could say he exercised on the government of former President Buhari. But however, I think my problem started largely with the high expectation I have on President Aswaju. I supported President Aswaju with the belief that being a seasoned politician and somebody who is associated with progressive tradition, and he said he's an Aoist. His role model is Obafemi Awolowo, and Obafemi Awolowo certainly is one of the progressive leaders of this country. So my expectation with his government is that, and that is why we were ready to give ourselves and fight and the leadership of President Buhari in terms of blocking who succeed him. My expectation was that President Aswaju will prioritize building the party and will be a much more better Democrat, allowing internal debate and constant contestation. Unfortunately, that is not happening. And part of the challenge was that there were some mistakes which, from the background of this particular program, you highlighted. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes President Aswaju took was making that declaration on his inauguration day, declaring petroleum subsidy is gone without even sitting down to put up a plan. Until today, no plan to respond to that challenge. And that is why living condition in the country is crashing. And the government is just grandstanding. All of us in the party have become onlookers. We are not able to even access President Aswaju and influence decision in terms of what needs to be done. And this is the bigger frustration. And from the way things are going, my prediction, which is why I had to act the way I acted, is that by the end of this year, if we don't take time, the campaign for 2027 will start. And people will be forced to just queue behind any leader. And out of anger, out of frustration with the reality before us, we'll end up even electing a worse successor to President Aswaju. And all the challenges of the country will even get worse. So my position now, and that is why I said I'm returning to the trenches, is to start the campaign to ensure that, look, we do the fundamental. Our democracy is not all about election. The fundamental thing about democracy is the capacity when you elect leaders to hold them accountable and regulate their decisions in terms of what they do. And that is the function of a political party they come from. Once there is no party, and the truth about it, which is the reality we face today, and that is the tragedy of our democracy, all our parties are just legal entities. And that is why they are only election machineries.
All right.
So this, the whole question of returning to the trenches is to begin to campaign to do the unconventional thing of returning to start building a political party before even the electioneering season for 2027 start, so that all candidates will emerge based on not only based on democratic process, but will be committed when they are elected to submit themselves or subordinate themselves to the party machinery, which at the moment doesn't exist.
All right, so just to the second point, because that statement you made about them having to rig the election in 2027 is the only chance that.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That is fine. That is fine. Look, for me, I am aware. Look, it's not secret. 2015 election, there cannot be any basis of contesting that result. We won that election fair and square. 2019, the same thing. 2023, my belief is that we won that election, but unfortunately, even before the election, the country was set up on a kind of politics, very bad politics, that no matter the outcome, those who lose the election will contest the result as being rigged. And unfortunately, it's because we have created an atmosphere of distrust, which our leaders have lost the humility to accept that they contribute to creating those atmospheres. That is why the whole question of whether we rigged in the past is being raised now. But in terms of moving forward, for me, if election is about winning the support of citizens, based on the belief that citizens have confidence that candidates or leaders who are contesting for election will address their problems and challenges, at the moment, what I see President Aswaju doing and APC doing is to erode the basis of confidence and the basis of trust.
Okay.
And there is no way citizens can support APC or President Aswaju or candidates on the platform of APC. And that's why I said, except if it is real.
Okay, Mr. Lukman, I'm one of those few people that calls you my brother, and this is Rufai speaking here, and good to talk to you again, and good to read all your very, very lovely, writings. But on the basis of the things you had written, and I'd read extensively most of your writings, there was no reason for Nigerians to vote for APC in the last elections, and that goes back to Ayo's premise on being rigged. APC didn't have a reason to be voted for. Buhari, like you wrote in one of your letters dated the 7th of June, had ruined the economy. It was already in dire straits. So there was no reason Nigerians voting for the APC, you selling that same party that ruined the economy and giving them a second chance. Because if you said that, then that's a reward for poor performance, like you enunciated that Buhari was shambolic, to say the least. So that also goes back to the premise of, has rigging ever happened before? You would answer that. But a couple of things you wrote. I want to take you to that letter on the 7th of June, prior to this one. When you were talking about that, we do not need a democracy where we vote in civilian overlords. And frontally, you called Tinubu a right-wing, politician, hardliner now, which is at variance with what's supposed to be the ideology of, sort of like a center-left, caring for the people, social injection and things like that. In fact, you even praised Tinubu and said, any sin of the last social intervention was done under Buhari's administration. And he's now very right-wing with those decisions. So, has he become now an overlord of some sort? Because you say you can't reach him, you can't talk to him. And I'm shocked that somebody like you in your capacity can't even pick up the phone and say, President Tinubu, I want to have a conversation with you and you're not doing well, you're not doing X, Y, Z. I'm shocked that you can't even talk to him. So has he become an overlord? And secondly, because you and I argued on this television when you were trying to tell people to vote APC in the last election, I told you, no, there were no empiricals on ground. And you said no and all of that, we still have to. But there was no basis, there was no substance, there was no terra firma to vote them on after Buhari had been shambolic, which we all could agree on. So those are the two questions.
Okay, well, on the first one, the question of whether people have voted APC in 2023 or not. Again, like I said, our leaders have created basis of distrust, And my reference point, if you remember our discussion or our debate before 2023 election, was that, look, for me, it's about making choices the same way you argue APC will have performed poorly. I argued that relative to PDP, APC was better. I may be wrong, and I'm not grandstanding.
But based on the facts, you are wrong.
I keep making the point.
Based on the empirical facts,
wait.
PDP had performed better than APC based on the numbers.
By that time,
yes.
No. You see, I admit that in terms of meeting up with our campaign promises, we have done badly, no doubt about it. And what are those campaign promises? Issues of security, issues of the economy, issues of fighting corruption. We have done badly. And people are free to read the conclusion whether APC is worse than PDP or not. But as at 2023, before the election, I had the hope that because our leaders were not in denial of the challenges facing us, they will be humble enough to admit that we have not done what we needed to do between 2015 and 2023. And under Asuwaju, I was practically very, very confident that he will not really do business as usual the way President Buhari did. Unfortunately, here we are, he's doing business as usual, and as it is, we are going to end up in a worse situation. So to that extent, you can be right in criticizing some of us who supported, who were in APC and who supported President Asuwaju. But now, coming to your second point, about Asuwaju being an extreme right-winger. And I try to explain this very easily. Look, APC was founded on the vision of being a social democratic party. Social democratic party prioritized well-being and condition of living of citizens. So the issues of education, issue of health, issues of social welfare should have been the priority. And that should be reflected in public investment driven by government. Unfortunately, what are the first steps President Asuwaju took? Apart from the fact that on account of corruption, social investment have been suspended, which is why the question of responding to hardship is so weak, Also look at the major decisions of President Asuwaju. Spending 15 trillion naira on Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway. Imagine if a fraction of that amount is invested in education. And in terms of education, we talk about 10 million out of school children in the north. You cannot solve that problem by business as usual, allocating pittance in education and expect classroom blocks, teachers to be recruited, teaching material to be procured with the pittance that is going on now. So you need extra budgetary activity to be able to respond to that and mop up the out-of-school children out of streets. And in terms of mopping up, the advantage of it is that it will also reduce the vulnerability of the nation in terms of insecurity. Now, imagine a fraction of 15 trillion naira invested in our armed forces by way of procurement of military hardware, training, and talking about even responding to security challenges. We've been debating as a nation for God knows how long about state police or not and what have you. Imagine investing a fraction of it to
Mr.
say we are
Lukman,
responding
if
to
you
the
can hear me.
crisis of policing in the country.
If you can hear me, we're trying
can
to
hear you.
manage time because we'll go shortly. Well, you also called the Tinubu administration. You said President Tinubu is running a reactionary government. You said that as far back as March. You also said in another report that this Tinubu administration has a penchant for taking decisions without thinking through the consequences. Fine. Some other people have been harsher than you have been. But we are also in this country together. Some of the people who criticize Tinubu called him names. Some of them are praising him now. So what will it take for President Tinubu? I'm sure he is watching, or he will get a report of all the things you said about him. If he reaches out to you to say, my brother, don't leave the party. What are those specific things that he should do that would make you change your mind and bring you back from the trenches? Or you present your concerns to him as an advice. Yeah.
Straightforward, Dr. Abati. Number one, I think President Tinubu need to really audit his cabinet, need to audit those around him, because I made this point, I can't remember where and when, that the President Tinubu we have now is not the same as Bola Ahmed Tinubu that ruled Lagos between 1999 and 2007. Because Aswaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu that ruled Lagos surrounded himself with very competent, very clear-headed people who, if you want to take the wrong decision, they could step forward and stop you and say, no, Aswaju, you can't do this. He doesn't have those people around him now. The people around him, like you highlighted, are people who are basically singing what you want to hear, and that is not healthy for a leader. In fact, if anything, they are setting him off to fail. I don't want Aswaju to fail. I still want him to succeed because it is in our own interest. As a nation, we are hungry for a leader who 200 years to come, citizens of Nigeria will be celebrating that leader just like Americans are celebrating the George Washingtons and what have you. Now, the second issue, which I think for me, if President Tinubu set out and start doing now, he will just demobilize some of us and we'll all queue behind him. If he set out and now allow party structures to function and ensure competent people leading the party on the basis of, when I say competent people, not just people he nominates, people with skills and capacity to engage him and persuade him or dissuade him from doing the wrong things, and get him to really act based on the decisions of the party. For me, if he does that, I will say our democracy has begun to mature. And if I see through that the party is beginning to gain the strength to really intervene and give direction in terms of the government controlled by the party at all levels.
All right.
And the manifesto of the party is beginning to gain life. I think if he does that, he will demobilize a number of us. And I will queue behind him. I will be his supporter up to the time I left the party.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Salihu Lukman, for your time with us this morning. It's really been quite the conversation. Thank you.